Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to helping business owners prepare for exit so you can maximize value and exit on your terms. This is the Exit Insights podcast presented by Succession Plus. I'm Daryl Bates-Brownsword, and today I'm talking with Andrew Miller. Now, Andrew's got an interesting background. He's a business coach, but he's got a background in insolvency. Thanks for joining me today, Andrew. Now, my first big question for you is, tell me, how does an insolvency practitioner end up as a business coach?
Thanks for having me on, Daryl. Good question. And I guess there's a lot of people probably don't really understand what an insolvency practitioner actually is. We hear about it, and I know there's some people outside of the Commonwealth, outside the UK, outside of Australia, which have very different processes. But even those within our arena will there's a lot of people who don't get it. Bottom line is, my job was running businesses. When a company goes bust in this country, the bank has the power to appoint a firm of accountants to go in, kick the directors out and take over. So for 16, 17 years, I was running businesses. It was specific circumstances, but you were in control. Now, you work with the directors, you work with the team because they've got all the knowledge, unless the directors are blatant crooks. But usually they're just normal people that have been in an unfortunate situation. So you're working with people to get the best out of them, challenge them, chase them, get the systems and processes in place to get things right, keep things running along, and the whole intention ultimately is to sell that business and keep all the jobs alive. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So in that sense, you know, every element of business you get involved in, legal, HR, commercial, everything, negotiation, the works. Flip side is you're dealing with people. And I was always very people orientated. And then as a leader within the firm, KPMG was the firm I was at, large global firm of accountants. So I was becoming a leader of people as well. That got me into the sort of personal development type space. And ultimately I realized I like working with people on one-to-one, getting shifts in their mindset and that kind of stuff. And then together that became a kind of a nice little bundle. And that together, it's like, actually, I've got the business experience, I've got the people experience. I can coach people. but I did actually start with a very, very specific niche, which is actually helping people going through an insolvency deal with emotional stress that's connected with that, and help them get their head right and get them back up on the wagon effectively and get them going again, because it can be a massive confidence.
They've got to move on, don't they? And I'm guessing 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's, you know, good people with the best intentions ending up in a situation that they never saw coming. You know, the bank's got an interest often through some sort of financing in the business. They're just trying to de-risk it as much as they can and sort it out for. And I guess most of the directors, you know, they have every intention and desire to honor their commitments. So absolutely. There's the background, and we go, okay, so if you don't manage your day-to-day and sometimes, you know, circumstances out of our control, it can end up in a hole. We want to take it one step further and go, hey, look, we've got a viable operating business growing. You know, we've learned from all of those potentially mistakes in the past, and we want to, you know, build a business asset so that we can sell on favorable terms rather than unfavorable terms.
Absolutely. And if I just draw through one of the key things, which I think is most relevant here is, or can be anyway, is that what I learned going with that insolvency thing is how much emotion there is tied in with the business, or can be. And particularly, you know, when you're losing stuff, it's like losing a child, losing a baby, it really comes up. But it's the same when you've got a successful business going well, all the systems, there's still an emotion connected, an identity with the name and all the rest of it. And that, if we're not careful, can be a big hamper in letting it go, because that's us we're letting go.
Yeah, directors are people too, aren't they? And and you know, everyone's human, and you know, we all have, as much as, you know, some of us try and bury it and hide it, we have emotional attachment to things and stuff. And if we've invested a big part of our life and our effort and our time and effort into building a business, we do become attached to it, you know, like your family, as you say. And at some point, you know, we need to move on to something else, whether that be planned or unplanned, the classic unplanned exit. So, okay, so we're now building the business, and we've got people, and recognizing that people have emotional attachment and investment in their business moving forward. We need to use that energy and that feeling and energy attachment to the best we can for the benefit of the whole business. how do we do that? So you're now working with people as a business coach. You're looking at the I guess the energy and side of things, the feeling side of things. How do you tap into that background and help business owners take their business forward and ultimately increase the valuation?
Yeah, well, I'm very much interested in the individual themselves and where they are. As I say, these emotional things hold us back. So I think in general, certainly with established business going around, I think logically, we kind of know what needs to be done. We've seen or been on the sales courses, been on the planning courses, been on the building, setting the processes courses, whatever it might be. We know the stuff, but we're not doing it. What's stopping us doing it? Because it's not knowledge. Very rarely is it genuinely knowledge that stops us doing it. Sometimes there's a lack of awareness. What you're trying to do is obviously create awareness of certain things that people might not have been thinking about. But I suspect most people listening to this kind of know what they need to do, but they may not be doing it. So why is that? What is it that actually holds them back? So that's the sort of situation who I'm working with, in terms of, if we change you, if we get your mindset right, get you thinking about the right things, letting go of the wrong things, etc., you'll be able to do those steps and processes that you should be doing anyway.
Okay. And does that also relate to letting go of control of the business and delegating tasks and activities and management functions?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the key things with any entrepreneur, I think, and usually there's that big shift from being the small business to the medium-sized business. Is the fundamental element of that is that ability to trust other people to do the job that beforehand you were doing.
Absolutely.
And that's a mindset shift. Absolutely a mindset. Everybody knows how to delegate or can read a book on how to delegate, but
well, good point.
Changing inside is different.
I was talking with someone just last week, and we're talking about the number of businesses in the UK that are capped at around £1 million in revenue. And we started to have a look and go, why is there such
almost
like a backlog or a bottleneck of businesses of that size? And we came to the conclusion that, well, 1 million, if you have a look at the average of, hey, look, the average revenue per employee or person in a business of about 100 grand. £1 million business equates to about 10 people in the business. And if you've got 10 people in the business, one entrepreneur can manage about 10 people without losing control. And once you start getting above about 10 people, you start losing control, or you need to introduce a management layer. And yeah, that gets a bit tricky. You're talking about delegations, because I'm no longer delegating tasks. I now need to delegate management functions. And when I'm delegating management functions, I'm feels like I'm delegating a whole lot more. And it might feel like to these people that they're no longer in control of their business. Is that what we're talking about here, Andrew?
Part of it, absolutely, yeah, because you're moving into a different space and spinning the plates in a different way. So, I mean, I'll use the word ego. It doesn't need to be in a negative sense, but just that sort of fear that you have to be in control kind of thing. And I'm working with someone at the moment right now, and she's a top salesperson, and but the MD has suddenly gotten in his position where he's got in his head he needs to be involved. He needs to be involved in every single sale of the big corporate contract clients coming through, and there's something inside of him which is clearly it's not trust. So he's kind of still got to prove himself. I think that's probably what it is from what we can work out. So he's got to be involved. Now he's going in and actually wrecking the sales. Just leave the salespeople to do what they do, get them to report back and support them if they need support. But he's diving in, getting involved because he's the big man, wants to be in charge, wants to be the face and whatever it is. And there are contracts walking away because they don't want to do business with him.
And I'm sure in his mind, he's adding value.
Sure.
Because it's never about intent, right? Like it's always about the best intent of doing the right thing and wanting to be helpful and wanting to help things out. And then to find out that we're actually getting in the way, like it's a real kick in the guts and the ego, as you suggest.
I think I can't remember who said it now, but might have been Dan Kennedy, but the job in any business is to make yourself redundant.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, I think everyone says that.
Yeah, it's a common phrase. And that's exactly everything you preach about. It's like if you can be in that position where you're not needed anymore, then you're in a position where you've got a business that doesn't need you and you can then sell it. But also you're able to be more strategic, you've got choices, you can be whatever you need to be, you can add, steer, whatever.
One of my clients said to me once, he says, I get it. The more I work in my business, the less it's worth.
Yeah, perfect.
I said, exactly. So you got to get out of the business. And ironically, the less you work in your business, the more your business is worth as an asset.
Yeah.
You might, and you've then got to restructure how you take income from the business. But if you want to increase the asset value of your business, we've got to de-risk the business, and you being in the business is a risk.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was a big, well, it wasn't a big aha because we've been working together for a while, but it was kind of said, it all makes sense.
It's a nice line though. It's a nice line.
Yeah. Well, the best clients are the ones that teach you the most.
Yeah. And, and depending on what stages where people are, but I would encourage people to, book themselves a 3-week holiday in 6 months, 12 months time, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, expanding periods of time that they can be out of the business. If you can't take a day off because you're nervous about what will happen, you're never going to be able to take a week off. You're never going to be able to take 2 weeks off. Yeah. The point is, you should be able to step away completely and things will turn on. So you've got to build that confidence up. So I know travel restrictions and all the rest of it, but they're opening up. So just be out the business for a period of time and then see what happens. And then where you need to make some resolutions.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I guess you've also had this awareness as well is that business owners are really good at doing stuff. They're really good at finding creative solutions and solving problems and getting stuff to work. And that often means, because they started with some sort of technical skill or operator skills, they're really good at doing and getting and finding the things that need to be done today to keep the business running today. What they've never learned how to do, and it's the Gerber stuff that says we need to work on the business rather than in the business. They go, yeah, I get it, but I know how to work in the business. I don't know how to work on the business. And I'm so busy working on the business, or in the business rather, I'm so busy in the day-to-day. I know where I add value. I know what I do well. I'm efficient. I know where to start. I'm not wasting time. As soon as I try and work on the business, I pull myself out for an hour. I get stuck because I don't know where to start. I'm looking down and going, what should I be doing? And then a problem comes on my desk and I can fix that straight away. I can add value. So I don't know where to start working on the business. So I get a bit lost. So one of the things we help business owners to do is we go, well, okay, it's about a new career. It's a career progression from being that operator to being the strategic person. You've got to stop working in the day-to-day every day and start working 12 months ahead of the business. So what does that mean? It means all the things you're working on now will hit the business in 6 to 12 months time. They'll add value to the business in 6 to 12 months time. And we've got a nice little term. It's working on the strategic side as opposed to working on the operations side. We color code all those bits and pieces just to create a nice jargon and internal language in the business. We make it easy for them. So, but they definitely need, and I think you're saying the same thing, some guidance, some mentoring, support, to a big stick sometimes to get them out of the business and on the business in whatever form that is, and what it takes.
It's a fine balance, because if you're someone who likes solving problems, there's that balance of stretching yourself and learning new skills and being different, but we also don't want to lose the authenticity of the individual. If they're a good problem solver, then let's get them solving problems, but the problems can be bigger. So there's this thing sometimes about, right, if there's an instant problem, I can instantly solve it, instant gratification, everybody loves me, I look good, whatever that buzz is that you get from solving that problem. It's learning to get the deferred gratification, which 6 months, 12 months, as you say. So they're still solving problems, just the better problems to solve.
Absolutely. The strategic problems are always there. They just can't see them yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they can still get that same buzz. It's just lifting them out and reading a little bit. So there's a bit of discomfort to start with. But
yeah. And as entrepreneurs, we all get caught up. We have this urgency addiction. We love fixing things now and getting them sorted. So, okay. So let's imagine you've worked with us. You've supported us. You've helped us understand holding us back, what's stopping us from making the changes available. You've given us some coaching and support and tools and tips, I imagine, to help us get out of the day-to-day and take 3 weeks off. So how do you do that? Like, there's some headlines. What are some of the things you do to work with business owners to actually get them to the point where they can actually book that holiday for 3 weeks? And then they're away from the first day and they're desperately picking up their phone, checking the emails, waiting for someone to call. How do you help them to get into that position that they can book that flight or book that holiday?
It's very much how long's a piece of string question, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of minutes. So that's what everyone
yeah,
wants to know.
So, I mean, well, you know all the stuff, but it's like, find out who's doing the actual work. That's the key thing, first of all. So whether you've got a team, whether you're outsourcing, whatever it is, who's actually doing the work. How do they know what the right sort of work is that they need to be doing and whether they're doing it correctly or not? So what are the systems and processes? Who's responsible for actually making sure, are we tracking what results are actually needed? And what are the bits that actually you need to be doing, only you can do, and what are stuff that ultimately can be covered by someone else? So, usually just starting that starting point in terms of tracking what they're doing on a weekly basis and seeing where their time is actually going can be very enlightening, because it's just a case of, oh Christ, I'm spending half my time responding to emails I don't need to respond to, and then half the time dealing with phone calls I don't need to. So getting rid of those in the first instance just instantly frees up time. And then you've got, you're getting your systems and processes up and running, the Gerber things you mentioned before. And the thing we always got to think about a system or a process is that version 1 will not be right. Version 1 will not work, but it will be infinitely better than version 0.
Yeah.
Version 2 will be twice as good as version 1. Version 3 will be, but version 1 is infinitely better than 0.
You've got to do version 1 to get to version 2. You can't,
exactly.
No matter how hard you try, you're not going to go straight from 0 to version 2, are you?
Yeah, and everyone goes, oh, I've tried it, it didn't work, and all the rest. That's the iteration, that's the innovation, that's the keep rolling it on, keep testing it, keep moving it kind of thing. So, and then of course there's the psychological stuff. So there's certain things I do which will go into the deeper psyche if necessary. So as I say, there's some sort of attachment to wanting to appear to be the one that's in control, or people pleasing, or whatever it might be. There'll be something beneath that will be dictating their psyche as to why they behave in that way. And there's things I can do that'll hopefully shift some of those things, whether that's through various techniques.
So it's identifying the behaviors that aren't serving them, and then coming up with tools and techniques or processes to help them change those behaviors ultimately. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah.
Brilliant. And so it's personal, a lot of one-to-one coaching with the owners, founders, directors of the business.
Yeah. I mean, as a business model, I've also got various sort of group things that run, regular low-cost things where business owners are coming together, sort of peer-to-peer mastermind group type things. Mm-hmm. A little bit different, but when I'm working one-to-one with someone, that's the sort of stuff that I'll be doing for sure.
Okay. And do you find yourself working with more than one director in a business at a time, or is it the sort of thing you can only work with one?
There are a few times I've got more than one director, often couples. Okay. Not unusual, but not always. Is always a bit more complicated. You've just got that extra dimension of what's going on. But so then you've got the element of communication between the two, and again, getting a clear vision that both parties can agree on. Because if you're going in the wrong direction, obviously.
Okay. So what about family businesses, Andrew?
I think this whole podcast is dedicated to them, aren't they?
So are we hearing that you avoid them, or you're
they just have their own richness, shall we say? The thing is, with family businesses, you've got an extra set of hats going on, so you can have a sensible professional relationship with a friend or someone that you brought into the business, but when family's involved, there's always that risk of things being taken out of context, things being misunderstood in a different way, assumptions being brought in quicker. So in truth is, as long as they've got the right intent, then it just comes down to communication, as it always does, and just making sure that they know what the basis of the conversation they're having is, so that it's a professional conversation rather than a personal conversation.
Try and keep things compartmentalized.
Exactly. Easy to say, obviously.
Sure, and there's always the risk in family dynamics and relationships where you've got the overlay of what's the best way to say this? We're probably more likely to treat them not as well as we do not family members.
Yes.
We'll say things more bluntly, more directly, and potentially more hurtful in a family type dynamic than we would ever dare allow ourselves to in a purely professional employee only situation.
I mean, it often gets the mantra of never work with family and that sort of things, and I don't agree with that. I've seen it go horribly wrong, and it can go horribly wrong for sure. But I've seen it go well as well, and you can get some, if you've got the right relationship, the right sort of groundings in place beforehand, you can get some really fantastic family businesses.
I remember a business I was involved with once, and I was working with the two directors, a male and a female, and it was 6 months I was working with them very closely before I learned that they were a married couple. They kept their business life very separate from their home life, and they did it very well. And it was a pleasure to be involved with the business. If I'm honest, they did a great job. No energy whatsoever.
Beautiful when you see it happen, isn't it? And then again, the other challenge of your second, third generation sort of thing. You know, my granddad started the business, my great granddad started it. 100 years we've been in this business, sort of thing. So whatever that be, but the longer it goes down, the more pressure there is on that individual to make it work, to make it a success. Do they have permission to sell it? You know, in their head. If it goes bust, oh my God, that's a real dagger to the heart, because there's so much. But even just taking it out of the business name. I mean, family name. There's a whole load around that. So
we've got the energy, the human factor, if we like, just human behaviors and characteristics that means makes it hard for us to change behaviors and to even see behaviors in ourselves that we need to change. We often need that external party to help us recognize it and that it is holding us back. Let's say we've worked through a number of those things. We've got the right people doing the right things. You've now got the directors in the business focusing on the tasks that they need to be working on, driving the business forward. They have created, let's call it a management structure. So we've got the management team working on the things and driving the business day to day. And they're doing all of their things. And we're now getting the business ready to exit. What could a good exit look like through your lens?
Well, as you say, if it's running in a sense where the business owner doesn't need to be there, and then anybody can come in and just slot straight in. So that's always going to be there's always going to be, you're not going to get it perfect, because there's going to be some sort of few relations and conversations and things. So I don't know what your experience is, but I suspect most business owners have some involvement with the business post, particularly if they've got a clawback clause in the deal and future profits and stuff, so they want to make sure their investment stays through. So there's always probably going to be some sort of involvement. So yeah, a good exit is obviously getting your basic intentions sorted out first of all, so that everyone's kind of on the same page before any lawyers get involved. Yep. So we kind of know what the basic generation is. Things running systematically and automatically, so that it doesn't need too much of a change at the top level, as I mentioned before. And one thing that's important for me, and I'd like to bring it to the podcast of this thing, is that whoever's selling, having a rough idea, doesn't need too clear, but rough idea what they're actually going to be doing post-sale. Yeah, so I mentioned, obviously, they're going to get involved with the business, but what else are they going to do? Now, in some cases, there might be another business coming out at the other end, but do they know what that is? Have they got an idea? Do they need time off to think about that? Some people might be thinking about retiring and just sort of kicking back and relaxing and getting a yacht around the Caribbean or whatever it might be, but they're probably going to get restless.
Yep. They'll always get restless. Pina coladas on the beach are great for 3 weeks, and
exactly. And off you go again. So having a sudden break can be quite dangerous. So you work hard. There's always going to be intensive getting the sale across, but if you've been doing those 5 days a week, 7 days a week, all the way through, and haven't learned to get yourself out, and suddenly there's this stopping point where, oh, what am I doing now? If that's not been thought about in some way, shape, or form, it can create a real vacuum and disassociation, because again, this emotional thing, this sense of identity, I am the managing director of this business, or whatever you call yourself, when that's taken away, we can get into that state of, who am I? And it's quite disassociating if you've not thought about it and planned through. And sometimes that just not really thinking about what happens afterwards can mean that you don't really put the stuff in place early enough. You think, well, I'll give you an example. There's someone I knew who was basically in a good place to go. Everything was working fine. He had an offer on the table, which was absolutely top notch. And he could have got out at that point and done really, really well for himself, but he wasn't ready. He hadn't got himself clear what he was going to do. It's taken about 3 years to work out what he wants to do. And in the meantime, regulations have changed, things have changed, the world's changed. He's probably lost about 30% of value of what his business is worth. Now he's still going to do all right. He'll be okay. He's not going to be on the poverty line result of this, but there's always going to be a little bit of, well, if only. But now he's in a position, he knows what he's going to do. He's got a plan rolling forward, and he can step into it. If he'd thought about that earlier on and got placed earlier on, he'd have sold earlier. Extra little bit of that, and it would have probably gone straight to the kids and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's a really important thing. Entrepreneurs are very visionary people. They're very active. They're always doing something. They need a break for sure. But if they don't know what's next, there'll be something come up which will prevent the business, the transaction, from the deal from happening, isn't it? Is what I'm saying. So if you want the deal to happen, know what's happening next for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's one guy I know. It doesn't have to be majorly grand, but he knew that he was going to. He's an accountant. He sold his practice to another firm. He knew that he was going to be 1 day a week helping them, 1 day a week setting up his consultancy business, which he's going to pick and choose which clients he work with. 3 days on the golf course. Thank you very much. So it doesn't need to be major, but he's had that clear for 12 months now. He knew exactly what he wanted to be doing afterwards. He knew which day, when, and all the rest of it. He's made it happen.
Hope he enjoys 3 days on the golf course.
Not my thing, but if you find what's good for you, that's the important thing.
All righty. So we've got pretty clear on what we need to do to get a nice clean exit, and a big part of that is knowing what we personally are going to move on to. So we've got a vision of what's next for us. What about post-sale? The business is now under the hands of the new owners. Is there anything that you need to focus on, that you work on with the people, or the people that are left in the business, or the new owners perhaps?
Yeah, I'm more interested in where they're going next, but we do have to be mindful of, as we mentioned before, keeping a reasonable relationship with the previous or the new owners, but not to be totally at their beck and call. That if, like this guy that I alluded to, that's doing 1 day a week, it's that 1 day, and again, it's another learning point of letting go, because it's a different set of people that are probably doing it now, and it's easy to get dragged back into being that problem solver we were talking about before. And so you've got to put your boundaries in place and say, no, we've agreed it, and that's what it is. For me, and this is a big thing for me through what I do anyway, is once you've sold your business, you're in a great position to really do things to your heart. You've got your resources, you've got time. I mean, each their own, but for me, it's a great opportunity to really find, what can I do in the world that's going to make a real difference? And this is a sense of purpose, and finding something that's going to be sort of change the world, if you like, kind of thing. Because and it doesn't need to be hugely grand, but these people have sold a business, got the money, they've got all the skills and resources to make a massive difference. And for me, business enjoyment is my overarching thing. And part of that is saying, okay, we've got to make money out of this. It's a business, but what's that thing that's going to make a real difference, that sings to me, that talks to me? Because when I get connected to that and start doing something that's driving things forward, that makes a difference in the world, that means something to me, the level of enjoyment that comes out of doing that is so much more than just doing a business for the sake of doing a business.
Okay. Is it possible that they can do both at the same time? The thing that sings to them is actually what they're achieving through their business, the change they're making through their business?
Oh, for sure. The business they've just sold, they obviously won't be doing that anymore. So
you'll be doing that for someone else. So it's finding your next fulfillment, or your next purpose, or living that purpose ongoing through another mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. So
okay,
because it comes at a higher level, now that business might have moved things forward in a certain way and been contributing to something that was meaningful. But obviously you just moved out to something else. So what else are we going to do? So what is that thing that's going to do? And normally it's going to be related to something inside. And it's a form of, what is that version of me that probably needed some help, and how can I help somebody out there that was a version like me, if that makes sense?
Some sort of personal mission or purpose.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant. Andrew, look, I really appreciate you sharing these thoughts and how you work with the individuals and the importance of the individuals to get really clear on their minds, their personal mission, their personal objectives that they're going to be working through next, to unlock them, to enable them to unlock or unbundle themselves from their business that has been part of them for so long. So we've covered a bit, but out of all the things we have talked about today, what's I guess the biggest point that you want listeners to take away from our conversation?
A business is just a mechanism. It's just a tool. It's there to get you what you want. It can make a difference for other people. It can have an impact, but ultimately it's a systemized way of solving problems. That's ultimately what a business is. And the more you can keep yourself using that to serve what you want and those around you, then the better you're going to be. It's when you get dragged in and start getting caught up in the business for the business sake, you start getting into difficulty. But when you recognize it's just a mechanism or a tool or a vehicle, whichever phrase works for you.
You are not your business. Your business Absolutely. Is just an expression of your purpose, by the sounds Absolutely. Of it. Okay, that's fantastic. Andrew, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate your insights and sharing with the audience today.
Thank you very much, Al. Thanks for having me on. Absolute pleasure.